That machine right down there that you're looking at, square in the center of your screen, is my so-called SLI monster. Although it's not really much of a monster when you consider what's actually in it. It's a Core 2 Quad Q9550 with 8 GB of DDR2 memory. It's got a 240 gig SSD. I think it's a Western Digital green, if I remember right. Just a cheap little thing. A pair of GeForce 8600 GTS video cards. Running an SLI, of course. But the big thing is that this is an Asus P5N-E SLI board, and it's a pretty old motherboard. In fact, it's PCI Express 1.0 and SATA 1.0, or SATA 1.5, I guess. It's 1.5 gigabit per second, and it's probably only barely so. I don't think it supports AHCI mode or anything fancy like that. Here are the existing Windows Experience Index scores. But here's what we're going to do. I am going to try something new with respect to actually backing this machine up, because we are going to replace this hardware in this video. We'll see if it'll actually boot off of the network, which it should. And we're going to take this option, boot to the FOG server, which may or may not actually work. Okay. So now that we are on my FOG server, which, yes, I have one, and it's way overkill for my actual needs, we are going to perform inventory. We'll actually register this host with the machine. We'll let it do its thing, which might take a while. Okay, enter host name. Call it that. Enter an image ID. I'm going to hit question. ID number 3. We're not going to associate it with a group. We're not going to associate it with snap-ins. We're not going to associate a product key. We're not joining a domain. Primary user, don't care. Other tag, don't care, don't care. Do you want to deploy an image? No. Alright. Should be registered. All the data is coming in. Alright, so now it'll reboot. And it should actually automatically switch. I'm going to actually just push F8 on this keyboard for a little bit. This is the FOG server, which I have up. And what we'll do is we'll list all hosts again. There you can see old SLI. I want to capture. So, alright, active tasks. There is one already there, I'll get to that in a minute. But there it is. So now, when I switch this, and I find my little tool that I was just using because this keyboard is missing something important. I was just using it like 2 seconds ago. I don't know if that's the same one or not. Go to the NVIDIA boot agent. Go back to FOG. It'll do its thing. And yep, looks like that's what it's doing. It's going to load part image. It's going to do all its stuff. Hopefully. So, there we go. It's doing all its thing. And alright, so now it's going to do its image capture, so we'll let it do that. That might take a little bit. Well, I didn't catch it, but it's rebooted because the task has finished. So now we are free to replace the system. But with what, you might be asking? With this. This is something extremely fancy. Gigabyte Z97X SLI. This is a Haswell system. It's not particularly fancy. It's on an i5 4460, which this camera will not focus on for some dumb reason. It's got 8 gigabytes of memory. I believe it's DDR3 1866. It's decent stuff. I'm going to be installing this, which is probably a piece of crap, just to be honest. But I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't really matter to me. And I'm also going to be installing this power supply in place of the Antec EarthWatts thing that's already in there. But, of course, I got to get this out. And that's going to be real fun, as you can probably see. And we're back with the pretty much absolutely empty Antec case. I forget what case this actually is. It's a gamer something, I know that, even though it certainly does not look like a gamer case. In fact, it's actually pretty flimsy for an Antec case. It's kind of disappointingly flimsy. I pulled the floppy drive out because the new board doesn't have a floppy controller on it, so I'm going to put a card reader there instead and hope the card reader will actually work. But I pulled the optical drive not because I'm not going to put it back, but because Doofus over here accidentally yanked the front panel audio connector right out of the front panel, so fortunately it just kind of sits in there. It's pretty easy to put back. But yeah, no, not with the optical drive blocking the way. So let me get the motherboard installed, and then we'll hook it up and get everything configured and working, hopefully. And there it is, all nice and installed. Once again, this power cable for the CPU, the 8-pin UPS 12-volt connector, was not long enough to use the cable management stuff, but everything else was. So it's all nice and neatly jumbled up right behind there where nobody's going to see it other than you on YouTube, but that's fine. And we've jumped straight to having the SLI set up because why not? So does it work? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm not going to do anything except hit the power switch. Hopefully it'll work. Beep. Cool. I think it does actually work. Awesome. Alright. So we'll go with classic mode because this new BIOS doesn't really tend to work too well. So you can see there, 8 gigs, 1866, CPU temperature 36 degrees. Pretty good, I think. So we'll have to change our boot options, and we'll see where we go from there. But I think what I'm going to do, I'll change the boot options. And actually what I think I'll do is I'll put the cover back on this, I'll install the proper peripherals to this, including this particular keyboard, because this thing only has one PS2 port, so I'm going to have to use the mouse, or I want to use the mouse, which means I got to replace the PS2 keyboard, so we'll just use this Dell thing. Should be more than good enough. Okay, so let's go to the IBA. I don't know if that cable's actually plugged in. It is. So that cable's actually broken. So we'll go to the FOG server once again. Hopefully. Perform full host registration. Let that do its thing. Okay, would you like to deploy? We'll hit yes. Enter FOG username and password. Alright, so we'll do that. Alright. So the host going to do all of its information stuff. It's going to reboot. I'm going to open up the boot menu, just because I don't necessarily trust it, since we do have a couple of PXE servers on this network. So we'll boot to the FOG server. Should hopefully do its thing. And now it should push the image out to this. Now this might not work because we're going from an NVIDIA chipset to, I don't know, is this an Intel chipset? I think, if I remember right, SLI required an NVIDIA chipset. But I don't remember if that's actually true or not. So you can see this is actually much faster, where previously it was only 1 gigabyte per minute. It's now almost 8. 8 times performance improvement would be very nice. So, we'll see how this goes. Of course, I am prepared to reinstall Windows if I need to. Probably should anyway. If I do have to reinstall, it's going to get Windows 8.1. So, well, this could go real well because it's already crashed out on me once with a stop error that I don't think I've ever really seen before. I don't believe all of the drivers have loaded, so I'm probably going to have to find the driver CD. Fortunately, I do actually have all of the boxes for all of this hardware, including the cooler, the CPU, and the motherboard. I didn't check to see if it still had the DVD in it, but if we take a look, we can see that there is definitely a bunch of stuff that's not actually functional. I'm not sure why the 7130 TV card is showing up, because that's not even installed. Device cannot start. Well, no kidding, it's not actually even installed. So we're going to just uninstall it and watch that blue screen the computer. But yeah, no, I'm going to go and get the driver disk if I can, and we'll go and we'll try and see if this optical drive will actually work. I think I was having issues with it the last time I tried using it, but we'll see. Okay, well, I don't know if it's really actually working or not, but it was at least good enough to read the disk, which was very nice of it. But it's taking forever to do that. I don't know if this drive actually works or not. Seems like it's having some trouble, but well, maybe it'll work. Maybe we'll get lucky. All I want to do is install the drivers for the missing parts. Okay, here's the problem with these driver discs, is it comes bundled with all this junkware. Like, at least most of it's Google crap, but, you know, it's got this stupid Google toolbar, like, as if we need to litter our browser with more toolbars, and Norton Internet insecurity, you know, like, I don't know why any of that is needed for a driver CD. Like, come on. So I'm going to go through this driver install mess, and we'll see where we're at once this is done. Well, that was impressively annoying. I had to actually go in and reinstall the driver in order to get SLI compatibility back. Not really sure why, it's kind of odd. The other thing that's kind of odd that I happen to notice is that it looks like they're both running in PCI Express X8 mode, even though I was pretty sure that SLI required one of them to be in 16. I guess it doesn't have enough PCI Express lanes to run one of them at 16, I don't know. Again, I'm new to SLI, I haven't really used it outside of this one computer, and I haven't really cared, as long as it actually worked. One thing that I probably should have done is I should have done a video render comparison, but it probably won't actually matter anyway. So go ahead and we'll check out our Windows Experience benchmark. Those are the previous scores. We'll see what we end up with now, if I can even run it. Okay, believe it or not, it actually went down. The base score did, because the GPU went down for some reason. I'm not really sure why. That's kind of strange. Might be because the other motherboard might have had more PCI Express lanes. I'm not sure. But obviously the hard disk went way up, maxed out the score. The RAM has maxed out the score. And the CPU has a pretty modest improvement. But it's nowhere near as top of the line as that Core 2 Quad Q9550 was. It's more like a middle of the road CPU. But I guess we'll see just what kind of performance this will give me for rendering video. Because rendering HD on this thing was not an option before. I'm almost certainly going to have to reinstall Vegas. I don't think it will run. Because that's how it's been the last several times. If I change any part of the system, I can no longer launch Sony Vegas. It just won't open. So that seems to be the case now, so I'm going to have to reinstall that. Okay. Let's see what happens. Just render it 2D. It actually kept all of my settings, which is good. Although I don't think it's got my proper video encoding thing on it. So we'll just pick one. That seems as good as any for now. And we'll see what happens. See how long it takes to do that. Okay, so in the interest of not dragging the video on for another hour, because I thought that it was midnight, or I guess now almost 12:30, but that's not actually true. Apparently, somehow or another, it's an hour behind. So, it's getting really, really late, and I need to wrap this up. So, the performance, as you can probably tell, is not great. I mean, this is only like a 13-minute long video, and it's going to take over 30 minutes to render. But what is worth noting is that, as you can see, it's not actually pegging the CPU. So it is doing some GPU rendering, but the GPU is just not really helping that much. Which is pretty typical from what I've heard of SLI setups, is that you don't really get that much added performance, and it can do some weird things too that you don't necessarily expect, but that's related to gaming, which I would never do on this computer anyway. It's just not built for it. Let's see what the CPU temperatures are like. Yeah, that's pretty good, considering this system was probably put together around the time the 4460 was brand new. And that was when? Like 2013, 2014. It came from NCIX. So NCIX has been gone from the Canadian market at the very least for probably 5 or 6 years now. So it's been a while since this thing was put together. So it's not doing so badly in the heat department. Of course, it's only a 4460 and it's got that massive Hyper 212 Evo on it. So this thing will probably get an i7 upgrade at some point. I haven't decided when that'll be or if I'm even going to bother. But I think that's probably a good place to shut this off. So we'll call it good enough for what we're doing here. Just to finish the video off, here is the old motherboard. Asus. It's upside down, but you can get the idea. You can see what I was talking about it being old. It's still got this SLI selector. It's kind of like a SODIMM. It's really just a jumper. But, yeah, we'll put that back to single because this thing's probably not going to see another SLI setup. I may put together another one with some other cards, but I'm not really sure. Check out the size of this gigantic cooler. This is what it came with. It was a bundle. It came with, I think it came with RAM. I don't remember if it came with RAM or not. I think it came with RAM. There's a video card, and there was this CPU and this cooler. So, I don't know. It'll probably find use somewhere, but for now it's just going to go away someplace else, because I don't really need it for anything in here.